Hey, what's up? EJK here, and I'm going to be bringing an analysis between SoS and Innovation on Overgrowth, played on Pro League last week. It was a request from someone I got a week, about a week ago, and I like to try to do requests as fast as possible. So, ta-da! Alright, so I believe the question asked was the person wanted to know more about siege tanks in the TvP matchup, and in this game, Innovation does a proxy factory. He does a little bit of pressure, and he follows it up with siege tank play to abuse the natural over here, where the siege tanks can siege up into the natural mineral line, and SOS ends up having to deal with it. He deals with it accordingly, and I'll get to that when we get there. But I'm going to be talking about the importance of making those siege tanks, what you can benefit out of it, what you lose out of it, and how it alters the timing of an otherwise normal TvP bio game versus Colossus. SOS also does, I like his play because he is a very unpredictable player. He is willing to make different changes to his macro game, as we see in this video. He does a very unorthodox DT warp prism timing, which I think can outright kill lesser players. Because of these timings and of how dangerous they are, I pretty much always build a turret in my main base and at least one in my natural, so that I don't outright die to these DT shenanigans, because they can be very powerful. Similar to delayed Cloak Banshees in the TvT matchup, where the timing for a regular Cloak Banshee is passed, and you think you're safe, but you're actually not. And DT starts swiping at your workers, and then you feel really sad. And then you feel really mad for losing to something like that. Innovation, going for the regular SCV scout, you're supposed to scout with, when you're at 14 supply, you rally your SCV to your opponent's base so that you can scout in time for any 10 gate shenanigans. He sees a very fast Zealot, as we see in the player cam. He sees no gas. He sees very little chrono saved up. So his Reaper knows, or his SCV tells him that it's going to be a regular fast expand by the Protoss player, but there's a Zealot out on the map, and the Reaper is going to have to take care of that Zealot accordingly. So we see Innovation sending his Reaper to the Watchtower. He's looking for the Zealot. He sent it to the second Watchtower. He didn't see it, so he goes back because he knows the Zealot's out on the map. And he knows that the Zealot is now in this Watchtower area, which is very, very annoying to deal with. You can't actually kill the Zealot there. Very good play by SOS, knowing that he can abuse this area with the Zealot. You can do this only on this map. Other Watchtowers, I'm trying to think. There's a couple other watchtower maps, and I don't think they have any brushes. I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember off the top of my head. But this is definitely one of the few maps you can get away with, if not the only, by doing this kind of shenanigans. And now SOS has a forward positioning with both a Zealot and a Mothership Core. And although the Mothership Core is out of position, I do want to note that SOS is still choosing to scout with the Zealot and the Mothership Core. It's primarily used for scouting purposes. He expects it to do no damage. He ends up picking off a Marine over there. He sees that there's a 4 Marine count. The Zealot still ends up staying alive against the Reaper. I don't think he was able to scout 100% what Innovation was doing. Good building placement on a map such as this. If you place your buildings towards this area of the map, you're going to be able to deny most of the scouting information that Protoss player can obtain with that. On a different map such as King Sejong Station, it might be a little bit easier because there's a lot more edge that you can poke with your Mothership Core to scout for tech. But as of right now, SOS does not know that this factory play is coming. Innovation ends up losing that Reaper, which is kind of a big deal. It's not a game ender because he's going for this Widowmine Starport play. He ends up scanning anyways because he doesn't want to. If there's an Oracle on the way and he doesn't see it, then he's in a lot of trouble. But because he saw the Robo facility, he knows that he can move these Marines out. If he didn't see that Robo facility, I don't think he would have moved those Marines out at all. And they would have had to stay back to defend against an Oracle play. SoS very smartly has his 2 Stalkers. I believe he has the Watchtower over here, and then he has the 2 Stalkers positioned outside of the Watchtower range, denying any way that the Marines can go to his side of the map. These Widowmines doing little to no damage. As a Protoss player, rip that Observer, should not have died, but as a Protoss player, you should really only lose 1 probe to the Widowmines. Sacrifice the 1 probe. SOS has to sacrifice another probe because he lost that Observer. But it should only be 1 probe. If your reaction time is fast enough, you shouldn't ever lose more than 1 probe, as we see there. And that friendly fire to the Nexus, very important, that I don't think anyone saw. But now we see the Siege Tank out, and Innovation currently has no vision of the mineral line. SOS is going to try to snipe the Siege Tank. He's going to YOLO in a bunch of Stalkers. If he can suicide these Stalkers for that Siege Tank, he's going to be happy with that trade, even though it's not a very cost-efficient engagement. He just doesn't want to deal with the Siege Tank hammering away at the mineral line. Fortunately for Innovation, he makes a second Siege Tank. SOS, if he... I think if his first Observer died and he was able to clean up the Widowmine faster, he would have been able to get there a little bit before that second Siege Tank came out, and it would have given him enough time to snipe that first Siege Tank. As a result of losing that first Observer, though, he isn't able to. And now he has to... He's doing a good job of denying it. That Colossus has enough range to shoot over that little edge area, and that Siege Tank kind of got shut down. But still a nuisance. Innovation, meanwhile, he's floated his starport all the way back to his main base. He made 1 medevac and then he floated back immediately because you needed to make medevacs ASAP. And he has the factory in a nice little positioning. He has that bunker to increase his defensive / aggressive forward positioning at SOS's base. And now we see that Immortal out. I think SOS, depending on how fast he scouted it, he could have built that Immortal before the Colossus, but I don't think he was able to see it in time, and the Colossus was already in production. So that Immortal ends up coming out a little bit late, but he still is able to just walk up to that Siege Tank and snipe it off, because those Hardened Shields do a fantastic job against Siege Tank-based play in this matchup. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was what does the important questions here we have to ask ourselves is what did that Siege Tank push accomplish? It forced SOS to make an Immortal instead of a second Colossus. It forced, or SOS traded some gateway units for a Siege Tank, so he was down by about a production round of gateway units. His natural mineral line was kind of shelled out for a little bit. I think he only lost a couple probes because there wasn't clear vision and SOS was constantly attacking with his units to get rid of that Siege Tank. And so the Siege Tank didn't really have a chance to fire too many shots directly into the mineral line. And how does this change the follow-up is the next question we want to ask. After the damage has been done, if we look at the supplies, the worker count is relatively even. Innovation has a bigger supply because SOS was taking kind of cost-efficient engagements to try to get rid of those Siege Tanks. So Innovation has a slight army lead. His third command center is a bit late. It started at about the 10-minute 30 mark. It's not extremely late. It's not extremely early. I would say, though, by getting those Siege Tanks, it delayed the command center by anywhere up to 30 seconds to a minute, depending on how fast he wants to take it. His 2 medevacs are also delayed. For a Reaper fast expand into 3 racks, the 2 medevacs would be out by about the 10-minute mark, but now they're out by about the 11-minute mark, so his 2 medevacs have been delayed by about a minute. So a 2-base Colossus follow-up could be a little bit dangerous if you aren't able to scout it immediately. We see that Innovation is building 2 Vikings right after the 2 Medivacs to prepare for this kind of an attack, because he knows that his 2 Medivacs are late. SoS, we see here, I'm going to pause the game for a little bit again. He has excellent map vision. I just want to point out he has a pylon here, he has an observer here, so his third base is all but secure. His main base is secure. He has another observer right here. I don't think he has, I'm not sure if he has the watchtower or not. I believe he does not. And then his building placement, as we see on the minimap, is very good as well. He has those 2 spotter pylons, and all of his tech is clustered towards the bottom of his base, and towards that area in the natural as well. Very, very safe from drops. Excellent building placement to both scout and to deal with these kinds of drops. Innovation, this drop scouted immediately, isn't going to be able to do as much damage as if it wasn't scouted. SOS is able to move his army there in time, and the 2 medevacs go bye-bye. And this is very cool timing by SOS. He's taking his third base, which is a little bit fast, but because he has that Warp Prism, because Innovation's medevacs are delayed and he's forced to be in a defensive positioning to be able to stop a 2-base Colossus all-in, that's why he made those 2 Vikings, this timing is going to be a lot more effective than it usually should be. And Innovation just dropping those mules right away, which really, really sucks for him. It's a very bad timing, or just unlucky timing, and concussive shells almost being done. But these DTs, even though Innovation does have a turret in his main base, he is aware that this kind of attack can do a lot of damage. He's still taking significant economic damage. He's splitting up his DTs so that he wants to force, SOS wants to force Innovation to use the scans. Those DTs not only doing a lot of economic damage, but they also saw the second starport, they saw the third command center, so he basically knows exactly what Innovation is doing, so SOS can react accordingly. And any follow-up play that, any follow-up aggression that Innovation would like to attempt is no longer possible because DTs are now a factor, and he simply doesn't have enough scan energy available to walk across the map. SOS would be able to burn 3 scans worth of energy by having DTs in good positions and sacrificing them for scan energy. So Innovation is forced to play defensive, and he's basically has to accept that SOS is taking a third base. What those DTs did for SOS's production is he had to delay his extra gateways. They now only just finished. His Colossus production was slightly delayed, but that's okay. And his Forge upgrades are also fairly behind Innovation's. I believe Innovation is on 1-1 and SOS might be either on 1-1 or 0-1. I think it's closer to 0-1 because of all the tech he's been doing. But he is able to secure this third base because of how much damage he did, how long he was able to buy time with those DTs. If those DTs were cleaned up immediately, Innovation's attack would have come anywhere from 30 seconds to 45 seconds earlier. That's an additional warp-in round. That's probably the difference between a Colossus being almost done and a Colossus being in position. And SOS doing these very good counterattacks. This engagement right here by SOS, though, was very unnecessary. He was doing a lot of multitasking. He sent the DT to the third base. There was units to defend it. He sent the Zealots to the natural. There was only 2 Vikings to defend that. But this attack here was completely unnecessary by SOS. All he needed to do was stay in a defensive positioning. See his armies over here. Now, depending on what SOS's attention was divided on, it could be a multitask error and he ended up engaging before he actually wanted to because he wasn't paying attention to his army, or he was doing it on purpose because he underestimated Innovation's army size because of all the economic damage that Innovation dealt. Either way, this is a very poor engagement. I think SOS actually engaged this on purpose because his charge finished. He does only have 1 upgrade, so Innovation does have an upgrade advantage. and he's attacking into this little choke. So with 4 Colossus, I think his the idea behind attacking here is that these units are going to be funneled into this small area so that the 4 Colossus are going to be able to overwhelm this army rather than fighting over here between the natural and the third base. However, I think one thing that would have turned this engagement around for SoS is that if you take a look at the supply, he's not actually too far off an army supply. However, he has 3 zealots in the natural, he has a DT at the third, so that's 8 army supply that is not in the fight, and he also has a bunch of zealot, well, he has 6 Colossus, or 6 supply and Colossus that isn't going to be available in the fight as well. And he also has a bunch of zealots moving right here that he warped in, that aren't actually going to be part of the fight. So as a result of these zealots being late to the fight, oh, that's another Colossus. No, there's zealots somewhere. I think he just warped, okay, so he just warps them in late. So actually, my bad. What ends up happening here is that SoS does have a good army. If his army was in position, he could have taken a good engagement because all of his upgrades were also lining up as well. But this is not a great fight because that one Colossus isn't in the fight. There's another Colossus on the way, but that Colossus doesn't matter because it's too far away to be used. But there's 5 Colossus out on the map. There's only 4 fighting. He also only has Stalkers as a wall, so these Colossus are essentially fighting on their own. Stalkers are not good at absorbing damage, and when they have to tank damage and they have to hit Vikings as well and be on the front line, you really need an additional round of Zealots to be able to stop this kind of attack. And as we see here, those gateway units just evaporate because Innovation also has an upgrade advantage, and SoS immediately warps in 8 Zealots. If he waited a little bit and he waited for that 8 Zealot warp in, I think that engagement would have been a lot more effective. Like, imagine having those 8 Zealots in the front line with 4 Colossus. Innovation has 7 Vikings. I believe there's only 4 or so here in the actual engagement. Those Zealots would have died. He would have had a lot more Colossus and Stalkers alive. You see it on SOS's face. He's just like, oh, FML. I shouldn't have fought there. Now he's in panic mode. That last Colossus gets sniped by Innovation as well. So Innovation is pretty much in a dominant spot right now. All he has to do is regroup his army, wait for his units to heal up. He only has 1 medevac out at the moment. He just produced a couple more to replenish, and go for a killing blow in a couple minutes, because there's absolutely nothing SOS can do at this point. His army is out of position. He's trying to do some Zealot counterattacks. That is going to buy him some time, but those Zealot counterattacks weren't nearly as effective as they should have been. They got cleaned up before they started doing any economic damage, and they were essentially just units being thrown away, which at this point in the game you cannot do. SOS killing that factory, trying to be aggressive with his army, but that at the same time that shows Innovation how little of an army he actually has. Innovation most likely knew this because of how well the engagement went and how many Zealots he was able to pick off right there, and how much harassment that SOS was throwing at Innovation. So he knows already that SOS's army is not as big as it should be, and just with just gateway units and a single Colossus splash damage, there's no way that SOS can defend this third base. He's trying to look for a good way to engage this army, but there's just nothing that he can do to save his third, and that one engagement really was the game ender, despite what Wolf was shouting about picking off these Colossus towards the end of the game. I understand that he's trying to provide hype, but it is hype directed towards the wrong part of the game. The game was actually over at this point, and by over, I mean it's not 100% over. If Innovation waited for like 5 more minutes for SOS to get his base back up and to max out, SOS would have a chance. But Innovation isn't letting that happen. He ends up pulling his SCVs. He doesn't really need to, but the idea here is that he wants to kill SOS before he gets Storm out, and this kind of an attack is going to be a very powerful timing attack because the Colossus count has been reduced multiple times. There is no splash damage on the way from Templars because of SOS losing that third base, the investment into DTs, and so this SCV pull, very, very strong timing to what was going on into the game, and a very good reaction by Innovation to finish the game out in a timely manner so that SoS wouldn't have a chance to get back into the game. If he was able to max out, then I would say he would be able to get back into the game, but anywhere before then is you gotta end the game as the person with the advantage. So yeah, looking at the grand scheme of things, the siege tanks delayed the economy slightly. It twisted the game into a somewhat unorthodox game, but before the siege tanks, Innovation had a very good pre-follow-up to the siege tanks. He was able to do a widow mine drop, a proxy widow mine drop at that, and to do some aggression, and then before getting the siege tanks into positioning. But SoS was able to deal with it fairly effectively, and I think it's safe to say that both players, after the siege tanks had been cleaned up and after they had their fun of the game, they both were in a pretty even positioning. SoS taking a slight advantage with that DT drop, doing a lot of economic damage, but then taking a very bad engagement, and even though he had a slight advantage here, it just plummeted downhill as soon as he started to engage in that area. So yeah, that pretty much brings an end to this video. If you guys have any more requests, that's probably all I'm going to be doing for now. There's simply too many games that I'd like to go over that I can't, so I'm going to leave it up to you guys to request them, and then I will get to it in a timely fashion. Peace.